Hello, I'm Phil Lenahan of The Better Part. Today's program is going to be on community policing, and we'll be talking with the Chief of Police of Cupertino, and we'll find out what they do, how they handle their job, and some of the risks they take to keep us safe. Please stay tuned. Our guest today is Captain Rick Sung of the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Department. He also performs the role of Chief of Police for the city of Cupertino. Let me give you a little bit of his background. He is well suited for the job with an associate science degree in administration of justice from West Valley College, a bachelor's degree in criminology from San Jose State, a master's degree in human resources and management from Golden Gate University. His path to this position also includes high-tech marketing and 3 Asian restaurants. Welcome, Rick.
Well, thank you, Phil, for having me here today.
How did you launch your career from 3 Asian restaurants?
Well, basically, as you can see on my educational backgrounds, that this is something that I have a passion for, law enforcement. But I kind of got sidetracked a little bit, and so that I got a job in high-tech sales and marketing, then went into restaurant business because I just wanted to be my own boss. But what I found or learned from managing my own restaurant business, it really did give me a very solid foundation for me to be very successful in law enforcement, as I was exposed to hiring, recruiting, training, and basically purchasing material. Having a restaurant business itself is running a business, right? And regardless of its size, you get exposed to every component, little component of a business entity. And so that was something that I was able to bring to law enforcement. So when I had to deal with our employees, with regards to their recruiting aspect, training aspect, but most importantly, though, that it's the customer-focused, customer service-oriented mindset that I was able to form before getting into law enforcement, that was very helpful for me to deal with our residents and seeing our residents as customers who needed to be taken care of. And of course, when it involves public safety aspect, that's something that I really am proud of.
Did you always want to be a peace officer?
I absolutely wanted to be a peace officer. As I was growing up, my father actually was in the Korean Army as a military police man. And so I used to see him in uniform and protecting the country, South Korea at the time that was. And so when I first came here to the U.S., that's something that I really took a huge interest in, becoming a law enforcement officer. There are a lot of law enforcement officers, if you were to ask them, why did you want to become a police officer, we will all say that we want to be a hero, taking care of our community, and that's why.
Okay, well, you come to us dressed as a sheriff from the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office, but how do you become the Chief of Police of Cupertino?
That's a very good question, Phil. So with the Sheriff's Office, we've been serving our West Valley community since we were founded back in 1850. And with regards to the city of Cupertino specifically, when the city was incorporated back in 1955, they reached out to the Sheriff's Office, hey, since you guys been already taking care of us or providing law enforcement services for our community, can you be our police department? So we entered into a contract, and since then we've been providing law enforcement services for the city of Cupertino as their police department. And my position within the Sheriff's Office is very unique in a sense that we have 14 captains with the Sheriff's Office, and my position is the only position that requires dual reporting. meaning I have my bosses at the sheriff's office, who is the sheriff, and I also have bosses in every contract city that we have, that is Cupertino, Saratoga, Los Altos Hills. So I report to 3 different city managers and also 15 different council members. So that's basically how, and so we have a captain of West Valley Patrol Division that takes care of all 3 cities, and I also have a lieutenant under me, and there are also 8 sergeants and of course close to 60 deputies that provide law enforcement services for our contract cities.
Out of your office?
Out of our division, that is correct. And the cities like to contract with us because there is a huge cost-saving factor there. Not only are our deputies familiar with our residents in our contract cities, but because we utilize our deputies not only for one city, but we share resources. So if there is to be any major incident in one city, then we will get other deputies from other cities, go out there and help out. And then once the situation is stabilized, then those deputies will pull out. So by having one captain, one lieutenant, and the other available resources, it is not only is it effective for our contract cities, but it's a huge, again, it's a huge cost-saving measure.
Sounds like your whole job could be taken up going to meetings with all these panels and committees in all the cities. You did mention when the Sheriff Department was founded. Tell us a little bit about the history. When was it founded, say again?
So our office was founded back in 1850. So that's when our first sheriff, Sheriff John Yance, was elected as the first sheriff in the county. At that time, the county had about 12,000 residents. He actually came from Illinois to settle down here in the Bay Area at the time. And when that opportunity presented itself, he ran for the sheriff back in 1949 and got elected in 1950. So from there, now that we have our 28th sheriff, who is Sheriff Laura Smith, and she's currently serving her, I believe, 4th term right now, and you know, and then of course the next term will be her 5th term.
When did women join the Sheriff's Department?
For our office, well, it's kind of hard to say because I did ask around, but I did not get a very firm answer. But one of the very first female deputies that I could think of is, her name is Pat Rouge. She joined the Sheriff's Office, I think, a little bit earlier than Sheriff Laura Smith, who has been with our office since 1973. But Pat, she rose through the ranks, and when she retired, I think it was early 2000, she retired as the captain of the Sheriff's Office, which was probably the highest rank as any female deputy could hold at that time. So she was one of the very first ones. Then, of course, the sheriff joined the Sheriff's Office in 1973. When these females joined the Sheriff's Office at that time, and then upon successful completion of academy training, they were actually classified as matrons and not as a deputy sheriff. So they wore their skirt, and they carry their firearm in their purse, which was specially designed to hold a firearm. And they could not get assigned to any enforcement functions. Rather, they worked at a desk, or they worked in the jail setting. And that's the only assignment that they could have received at the time. And so there was a movement amongst the Deputy Sheriff's Association at the time, the union that was, and they filed a lawsuit against the county, which they won. And back in 1976, that they were finally able to acquire the title of deputy sheriff, and they began receiving enforcement assignments. And the sheriff was actually part of that. Sheriff Laura Smith was.
Yeah, some of us have been victims of their enforcement by occasionally breaking a traffic law. The early buildings, how many of them, you showed me some pictures in your office, are still around? These are historic buildings that were up through the Sheriff's Department?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about I think Old County Courthouse was the very first building that I showed to you. So that was built in 1868. And I believe that to date, that is the oldest government building that is still in use to date. So, and then there are other buildings, and if I remember correctly, our main jail, and of course, which was known for 1933 lynching for the death of Brooke Hart. But that building, I think, stood up about 3 years after the old county courthouse. So that was back in 1871, our main jail was built.
That was on St. James Park, the old one?
That is correct, right in front of the St. James Park. That's correct.
So let's talk a little bit more about your career. So you start in the training. What was your first assignment?
So right after I got out of the academy, of course, as any deputy would, even these days too, it will be a court deputy. So court deputies' primary duty is to protect our judicial officers, that include judges, the attorneys, the deputy district attorneys, and any other members of public that will visit the court facilities. Just make sure that the peace is kept and there is no disorderly conduct or any criminal activity taking place. So that will be the first assignment. And for me, I was temporarily assigned to a criminal court, but right before I came out to patrol back in early 2004, I was assigned to a family court on Park Avenue in San Jose. I had a family court judge as my first judge. And that's where I was assigned. I spent about a year and a half, and then I came out to patrol.
On patrol, the things we see today make it really scary being on patrol. Well, when you approach a car, I mean, you must have to do a lot of calculations. And do you have any experiences with things happen when you have stopped?
Sure. Officer safety, of course, is the most important thing that everybody needs to remember as a law enforcement whenever making a car stop. I still remember, I think it was about 12, 13 years ago, about 12 years ago, I was a brand new deputy, I was a rookie deputy, made a vehicle stop on a suspicious vehicle. So in a very rural area down South County of Santa Clara County. And when I saw that there was an occupant in the front who was a female, and then there was a male occupant who was leaning into the back seat of his vehicle from the driver's side. And something in the back of my head was telling me that I just do not want to approach the vehicle, because usually 99% of the time we'll just make our approach to the vehicle and make contact with occupants, and that will be a standard protocol. But of course we learn to adapt and improvise. So because something did not seem right at that time, instead of making my approach, I called the backup unit, and I asked the gentleman to walk back towards our patrol vehicle, to which he kind of did not even, he didn't even acknowledge at the time that, my presence. And of course, any citizen, if they get contacted by a law enforcement officer, what is our initial reaction? It's like, oh, officer, can I help you? What did I do anything wrong? But he did not, and I just kept calling him, and he didn't even move. And I know that she was telling him something, and I know that he knew that I was there. So finally, he acknowledged us when my partner got there, and we were able to, bring him back to our car. And we also pulled a female occupant out of the vehicle and had her come toward us. And later, when we searched the vehicle, turned out that he had a loaded revolver right in the back seat, where he was leaning over. And the statement that he gave me when I was taking him to the jail, that he told me that, had I made the approach and got close to him, then there was a very high likelihood of him pulling a trigger on me. So of course, in the back of the trunk, we found all kinds of drugs, meth, the cash, and I had a photo somewhere I took because back then we were taking Polaroid photos, but I just could not find the photo.
Intuition. I guess it gets better and better.
Yeah.
I often wonder if you guys are automatic lie detectors. I mean, do you have a gut feel when somebody's lying, and even in a simple traffic stop? I'd like to think if I'm telling the truth, that the officer has enough experience, says, at least this guy's telling the truth. Is there an intuition in that also?
Yeah, well, we all always like to, because I mean, 99.9% of the contacts that we as law enforcement officers make, I mean, we usually deal with just regular Joe citizens, right? But there are times though, so we try to turn off our switch as much as we can if it's just a strict, traffic enforcement stop. And if I pull you over, Phil, and you're in a car, then obviously I'm not going to think that, oh, this person is going to lie to me or anything like that. It's just a simple traffic matter. Hey, this is what I saw, give you a citation. But there are times, though, that when we make those, what we think are simple traffic stops that can turn into something else because we notice that immediately that this person has something to hide. And that comes from both, based on our training and experience, too.
What's it like to work the night shift on patrol? I mean, that's, from one point of view, the quietest time of day, but also it's the biggest things maybe happen at night. So I realized we get patrolled in our neighborhood because we got a ticket for parking the wrong way once. But then somebody explained to me, you should be grateful that the sheriff was on your street to give you a ticket and keeping you safe.
Absolutely.
What's the routine on the night shift on patrol?
Well, yeah, our guys basically go out there, and because we know that a lot of vehicle burglaries take place at night while our residents are asleep. So especially the communities that we have, Cupertino, Saratoga, Los Altos Hills, affluent communities where a lot of what we call, so criminals, what I call dirtbags, they'll come out and that's the time for them to come out and do their shopping. So our deputies are staying very vigilant, and not only do we hit those commercial areas, but because we get a lot of vehicle burglaries in a residential area, they'll just drive through the area, and believe it or not, almost every single night that our deputies find somebody 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning as they are, breaking into a vehicle or they're rummaging through the vehicles. And as they're getting ready to break into somebody's home, those are the type of activity that our deputies are really trained to look for. So, but for me, my personal experience as being a rookie up in Los Altos Hills at night where there are no lights, street lights whatsoever, I can tell you, I know that it's kind of embarrassing, but I remember being lost a few times.
Well, now we have GPS. So you don't get lost.
Right.
What are the secrets of good policing?
Community service and customer service oriented mindset. As long as we know who our clients are, and as long as we know that we have to do our best to provide high quality service to our clients, i.e. our residents, everything else falls into its place. That's how I see it.
Okay, let's move along on. We now have 2 Apple buildings in our area, and they could be attractive or attracted to by terrorists or something. Is there a special coverage that the sheriff has, or is that all internal to Apple, or is it a compromise?
No, it's a mixture of both. I mean, at this point that we do not have any known threats to the Apple spaceship that is going to stand up, I believe, early next year. But Apple has their internal security force. They are very high-tech, they're very effective, and communication-wise between them and the sheriff's office, it's very constant. And we're working very closely with them to see if there is any threat. And if there is, then we will work on it as much as we can. But again, there is no known threat to us involving Apple buildings at this point.
Are there any other high visibility areas that you're concerned about in our community?
High visibility areas will right now that we're focusing on Valco. The Valco, I don't know how many residents are in tune with what's going on with Valco, but from community safety perspective, now that a lot of anchor tenants had moved out, in fact, the JCPenney's department store was the last major anchor tenant that was at Valco that they just moved out about a few weeks ago. And since then, we've been seeing an increase in the number of vandalism and theft specifically involving a copper theft that we're currently investigating. Because all these criminals know that once, a building or buildings that are as big as Valco now became vacant, that they know that's the place to come steal copper, and that's the place where they're going to, deal dope and other type of criminal activity. Also, the homeless people, transients will start now squatting over there, and that's the reason why we're working very closely with Valco Security, and we've been deploying our deputies to make sure that those activities do not take place. But regardless of how many people you have at a larger place such as that, we will always have issues. So I'm just hoping that the Valco can be revitalized, because I'm just going based on broken window theory, where one window is broken, then other people come and they break more windows and they start tagging, and it just attracts a lot of criminal elements. So that's the area of my concern at this point.
One other thing I noticed in the paper, the big bust on the counterfeiting. My question was, how come the sheriff did it, and that isn't it the Secret Service that covers counterfeit money? Yeah,
that's an excellent question, Phil. So how it was flagged was, it was actually flagged by another police department in a different state. Because it involved our resident, they gave us a call, and they did also try to reach out to Secret Service, because you're right, that's the department that usually handles counterfeiting money. But because they're kind of short-staffed right now due to an election coming up,
I see.
Because Secret Service, their other duty is to provide dignitary protection service as well. So now that we have so many different candidates that are running for the presidential, the presidency, and other type of federal, the elected positions. So they're spread out very thin, and so they can actually get involved. So instead, they asked us to get in contact with Postal Service. So we got the Postal Service involved, and between the other police department, us, and Postal Service, that was a joint operation, and was able to successfully take out the suspect.
One information point I want to make while I remember it. What phone number should you call under which circumstances?
Right. That can get very confusing, but when in doubt, I would tell our residents, call 911. Okay, call 911. Right. However, if our residents are making calls from their landline, 911, if they can determine which is which, but 911 is basically an emergency number that it has been set aside for really emergency phone calls. But if our residents cannot determine if this is emergency or not, they could always call 911. But we have a 7-digit non-emergency number, which is 408-299-2311. That is something that they can store on their cell phone, and they can call it from that line, because everybody carries a cell phone these days instead of house phone, so they can use that. But I just tell everybody, I said, when in doubt, just call 911, and that's the simplest way to get in contact with the sheriff's office.
Okay, let's talk about careers. What education do you need to start the process in just applying?
Yes. For enforcement deputy position, we require our folks to have at least 38 college units. The reason why it's 38 college units is because when they attend a 26 police academy, or the sheriff's academy, because we have our own academy, they will get that 22 units. So if you combine the two, then now you have a degree, or now you have units equivalent to an AAA or AS degree. So that will be the minimum qualification, or the minimum educational requirement that we require for our candidates to have. If you're a lateral officer, meaning if you're coming from another agency, then you are supposed to have 60 college units. So that's basically the minimum qualification that we look for.
I've been to a few police graduations, and I was really impressed with the education of these young men and women coming out. So you encourage women to become sheriffs?
Absolutely, yeah, because I mean, there are some female deputies when it comes down to being my partner, because I've had my own experience as a deputy, and I had my female partners that work with me side by side. There are a lot of female deputies that are highly qualified and highly liable, and that I can trust to be my partner. If I can trust them to be my partner, then I would also trust them to be my boss. So yes, I absolutely encourage all the female deputies or the female candidates to apply for a deputy sheriff position, and because we do need female deputies to be able to provide better service for our residents as well.
They get the same rigorous training?
Absolutely, yeah.
Full equality.
Full equality, yeah, and then they get the same pay, not like it was like 40 years ago where they were getting 15% less than male deputies when they were matrons. So.
And who do they contact? The sheriff's office?
Yes, they can easily go on Go Sheriff, the website. We have a website specifically created for recruiting purposes, so they can get on it, or they can simply contact our personnel and training by phone, and our recruiters will be able to provide all the information that they need.
And there are positions available for non-sworn officers?
Yes, we have positions available for sworn deputies, enforcement deputies, correctional deputies. We also have positions available for civilian staff, yes, non-badge staff.
Well, we're rolling out of time, and I never think there's enough to talk about, and then it just fills up the whole program. Do you have any closing comments for the community, for citizens, or anything?
Just one thing that I would ask our residents, we want to be our residents' best friend, okay? In order to build that relationship, we want to earn their trust. So whenever there is anything going on, especially in our West Valley cities, there are very diverse communities. Some culture, folks from some culture, they don't like to call police officers because they don't have good experience with them. But here in Cupertino, it is way different. We know how to treat our customers. So do call us. If you see anything suspicious, anyone suspicious, call us. We will be out there to investigate, and we would like to collaborate with our community, and that's the only thing that I would ask.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming with us. And as I tell every police officer, stay safe.
Thank you.
And thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching today's program, and we hope you enjoyed it. Our programs are also available on YouTube and Roku. You can find out more about us if you'd like to join our program. We're just a bunch of volunteers having a lot of fun making TV shows. Just call the Cupertino Senior Center. If you want some more information on the organization, you can check our website at www.thebetterpart.com. See you next week on The Better Part.